Hello, Patriots. I'm Lee Watts, and this is Patriot Point, your source for news and analysis from a conservative, Christian, and common sense point of view. We're talking about two really big stories this week. This first one is about the Autopen scandal, which is much bigger and deserves far more attention than what it is being given in the mainstream media. As Representative James Culmer, the congressman from Kentucky, said, this is, quote, the biggest scandal in United States history, end quote. This is bigger than Watergate or any other scandal. We now know, because of recent information that has come out, books that have been released, and in congressional investigations, that every single pardon, without exception, that Joe Biden supposedly issued did not come from Joe Biden, but came through the Autopens, as well as this glut of executive orders that came out of the White House in the last 100 days of his presidency were not actually by him at all. These are the same executive orders that are now being used by judges to try to stop President Trump's administration. So that by being able to prove this is Autopen and taking this to the courts to overturn it, it's going to void all of those executive orders, get rid of all of these judicial problems, and undo all of the pardons. Members of the Congressional Oversight Committee have said, quote, these were not legal. There is no way this will hold up in court. And yes, it is on its way to the courts. So I want to play a clip from you from the person who is really leading the spearhead charge into these investigations. It is Representative James Culmer of the Kentucky Congressional delegation. He is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. And I want you to listen to some of the important things he says about this scandal.
That's hard evidence. Early into President Biden's term as president, it clearly shows that he was in significant mental decline. It questions who was actually making the decisions. So what we found is not just with the pardons he issued, but many of the executive orders that the courts are now using to Trump-proof many of the executive orders that President Trump is trying to implement to make government more efficient. Many of these executive orders, as well as the pardons of Biden's entire family as a result of our investigation, these were all signed with the Autopen. And clearly from that interview, which was many, many months prior to the heavy use of the Autopen, Joe Biden wasn't capable of making decisions. He wasn't coherent. We think we've identified who the staffers are. Jason, you all have done great work with that over at Heritage Oversight. We're going to bring everyone that we believe was involved in any role in the use of the Autopen. We're going to invite them to come in for a transcribed interview. If they want, then they will receive a subpoena and they will have a full-blown deposition. But we want to find out who was actually making the decisions in the White House during the last 9 months of the Biden administration when he was clearly in mental decline.
Congressman Culmer is talking about the seriousness of this. Going on and talking to him, he said that this is incredibly serious, and they've been able to track down this use of the Autopen to 4 Democrats who were unelected staffers in the White House office. As Breitbart News says, this is a high crime and has criminal evidence of impersonating the president. So you have people that are doing things who are not the president, who have no legal authority to do those things. Congressman Culmer went on to say, if I could, I would put these people in jail, end quote. However, the only authority Congress has is to conduct the investigations, to issue the subpoenas, and gather all the evidence. Congressman Culmer, as the head of the Oversight Committee, has said he will be turning all of this over to the Attorney General and encouraging the Attorney General to take these people to court and then to jail. And we can finally see some people locked up for breaking these laws. Then the law is actually going to have teeth to it. This really follows a biblical principle that you see in Proverbs chapter number 19, verse number 5, which says, a false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall not escape. So you see there, the biblical principle is if the law is broken, it should not be unpunished. There should be a punishment for people who have been impersonating the president. Now, if you look back on history, we know that the massive glut of executive orders that came out of the Biden administration came out in the last 100 days of his term. However, he was not very much at the White House during the last 100 days. We know that he was back in his home, he was on vacation, and yet he was supposedly issuing from the White House hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pardons and executive orders. I think everything's about to fall apart, and we might be able to see Fauci and Hunter actually have to testify. Because here's the catch, everybody. Since they are currently under a presidential pardon, that means they cannot be prosecuted, but they can be forced by subpoenas, be forced to testify before Congress. But after they're forced to testify, if it's proven that their pardons are all fakes, which we now know all of the pardons, without exception, were signed by the Autopen, not by the president, that requires his personal signature, then after that, their pardons can then be revoked, and they can be charged, and we can maybe actually see some justice on Mr. Fauci, Mr. Hunter, and several others. Big news on this, and I like to say it's the Kentucky Congressman James Culmer from my home state leading the charge on this. Very proud of somebody up there doing something to represent the bluegrass well. I want to talk about the other big issue we have going on in Kentucky this week, and that is how we have had a Kentucky state senator switch from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. It is State Senator Robin Webb. And by her switching it over, it means out of 120 counties in Kentucky, 118 of them now have a Republican in the Kentucky State Senate. That is correct. If you do the math, they only have 2 counties left, the Democrats. That's Fayette and Jefferson County, which is Louisville and Lexington. The Republicans not only have a majority or a super majority in this Kentucky State Senate, they now have 89% of all of the senators in Kentucky's State House are now Republicans. So good news for the Republicans, but it gets even worse for the Democrats, because another of the Democratic senators is going to be leaving the State House. That is correct. Kentucky State Senator David Yates has said that he's going to be leaving, and he is going to be seeking an office there in Jefferson County and leaving his Senate position 2 years early. Now, this does not bode well for the Democratic Party, and these are 2 very bad signs for Andy Beshear, because Andy Beshear is supposed to be the champion of the Democrats, supposedly the most popular Democrat governor in the country. And I find that very hard to believe, and I think it's only the liberal media saying that. And he is suffering some major setbacks in his own party, in his literal own backyard. Literally, his house, the State House, is in his backyard there. And he can't control his own party is leaving him here. So I really think let's be kind to Andy Beshear. I would like everybody please to send him maybe an email, a text, a letter, and just says, get better soon. He's not sick. He just needs to get better. So everybody send him a letter saying, hey, hope you get better soon, because he really needs to get better. And of course, I can't let this week go without mentioning something that's really near and dear to my heart. I am a combat veteran. And today, as we release this edition of Patriot Point, is the 81st anniversary of D-Day. So we want to take time to honor and remember all those who made that most historic invasion fighting against the Nazis. And just a little thing extra, the word Nazi is a little acronym shortening what Hitler's political party actually stood for. His political party was the National Socialist German Workers' Party. And you get the word Nazi from the first syllables of the first 2 words. From national, you get na, and from socialist, or Sozialist, the way a German would pronounce it, you get the Z, not C. So those patriots on D-Day were fighting the socialist, which is the same thing the patriots in America are fighting to this day. I hope this will be an encouragement to you to keep standing up and pushing back against this socialist agenda. Well, that's the news we have for this week. So until next week, Patriots, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point, reminding you that liberty is not a spectator sport.